Kapul Mwagi Batanga. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here from wherever you are meeting from. I'd just like to start this morning with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the old people of this land from which we are sitting on, the Turrbal and Yugara people. We acknowledge the land that they've taken care of over many thousands of years. I want to acknowledge the elders, traditional owners, and any blackfellows who might be tuning in this morning. And this morning I also lean on the wisdom of my ancestors and their knowledge and their guidance this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome, everyone. We hope there's going to be a good conversation together. And we just want to thank Multicultural Affairs for inviting us and for having us here this morning with all of you logging on and joining us. We're from Together for Humanity. The organization we work for is multicultural, multi-faith organization. And what we do is we go into schools and their communities normally. We address all the things that come up from living in a ever increasingly diverse society. So the challenges as well as the beauty, but we find that some of the most challenging things is that people are getting unsure, whether that's young people or older generations, we're getting unsure about what is the right thing to say and what's the right thing to do. So we've created this really narrow PC space where we're not sure anymore whether everyone's going to be offended if I just say something. And then on the other side of the spectrum, as we all know, there's this really uncomfortable and often inappropriate space, whether that's behind people's backs, people laughing, kids getting bullied, and as we know, the social media space where people just feel free to say whatever's on their mind, and that's not really conducive to a good conversation. It's not conducive to learning from each other or building each other up. So what we like to do is invite people into the center space, the middle part, where we say, let's dialogue, let's find someone that's different from ourselves, and let's ask them really good and respectful questions, which also invites the other one to answer in a really good and respectful way. So this session is going to be like that, just a snippet of that where we say, well, let's have a conversation and we'll invite you all to engage with us because we don't have much prepared other than a few things in the beginning. And then we'll just engage with the questions that you may have of us. So we'll have a short introduction of everyone, and I'll start over on this side.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum everyone. May peace and blessings be upon you all. I'm Iram. I'm an academic at the University of Queensland, currently pursuing a degree in Masters of Education. I am a teacher by profession and I'm a cultural enthusiast.
Thanks, Iram. My name is Mary. I'm a mental health advocate and I consider myself a feminist.
I'm Tanja. I'm a Christian and I really value my faith. And like Mary, I also see myself as a feminist.
Hi everyone, I'm David. I'm a soccer player and I'm the oldest of 9.
Hi everybody. Again, my name's Josh. My dad was born in Papua New Guinea. And my grandmother is one of 14 children.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Josh. So what we, like human beings, what we do on a daily basis is categorize things, put things into a category to make sense of their meaning and usefulness to us. We also do it with, with human beings. We like to guess or put people into a category to guess their nationality or their race or their ethnicity, and putting people into a box or categorizing them. For example, if I say Tanja is a white woman, there is nothing wrong with saying that Tanja is a white woman. She is factually white or Caucasian, you know. She's got, you know, lighter skin and blonde hair. There's nothing wrong with, you know, saying that. However, the problem comes when you say Tanja is a white woman, so, you know, she might be a Karen, or if you see me on the street walking and you didn't know me and you say, oh, she looks like she's Sudanese, so, you know, she might be involved in gangs, or, you know, she might be a robber or a criminal. That is very problematic, because you're just making biased assumptions, and that is a dangerous thing to do, because you're just making assumptions without knowing that person. You obviously decided that, you know, you're going to treat this person not in a nice way because of your own unconscious bias about them. So we would like to test that theory about, you know, just like making assumptions on people without like knowing them. So I'd like to throw out a question to everyone. Who do you think is not Australian between all of us here, is not Australian or Australian citizen? And you can ask the question in the chat box, or you can throw in our names and stop.
Thanks, Mary. So it's very interesting to do that experiment. So I don't know if you've thought about it and given it a bit of a moment, but when we do this, for example, in a school, we ask the students to literally throw us in a box if they think they're not Australian. So Josh often gets put in a box because of his tattoos. There's an assumption that he's perhaps Maori. David gets put in a box because of his skin color, and we find that people are quite hesitant to say because of his skin color. I get put in a box, you may guess it, because of my accent, and I try, but I can't not have an accent. Mary, you get put in a box as well because of skin color a lot of times, and Iram would be put in a box because of clothing and religion. And so we unpack that then, and we say, you know, just because you put us in a box, you made those assumptions, do you now know whether we are or are not Australian? And you can reflect on that as well. And to put you out of the misery, we'll sort of go down the row again and sort of give a little bit more of our backgrounds. And after that, we would like to invite you to engage with questions. The way you can ask a question is by hovering your mouse on the bottom right corner on the 3 dots. And you can just type those questions in. No one else will see the questions except for us. So then we'll just look at those and hope to answer them. And I just want to preface it as well, is that we can only speak for ourselves. We are not representing a greater community. I'm not speaking for every white woman or every Christian, and nor is anyone here in the room speaking for their wider you know, ethnicity or group or interest or religion or whatever that may be. So I'll hand over to you, Iram, and maybe you can explain a little bit about your background and what brought you to Australia and whether you are Australian or not.
Well, I am an Australian who was not born in Australia. I was born in Pakistan and I moved to Australia about 7 years back, and I'm now very much a citizen, and I consider myself a very important part of Australia as a citizen. So prior to moving to Australia, I was a teacher, and when I moved to Australia, I was busy in my family life. I sort of decided to get to know the culture, to get to know the society before moving on into the profession. And just last year, I decided to pursue a master's degree in education to move into teaching in Australia. And I have been to multiple schools, and I have engaged with a very diverse population in Australia. And that is what sparked my interest in, you know, working to have a dialogue between different cultures and try to find a way that is harmonious between us. So, yep, that's me.
Nice. So I'm not an Australian citizen. I am a permanent resident. I came to Australia in 2014, so that's about 10 years now. And yes, I know that it's long enough for me to apply for my citizenship. However, I do have a complex situation. That's why I have not pursued my citizenship yet. But like Iram said, I do consider myself to be an important part of an Australian society. I do identify myself with a lot of Australian values and way of life. So I would love to have an Australian citizenship. And I am patient that one day I will get my Australian citizenship. And so that's just about me.
Thanks, Mary. I'm not an Australian citizen yet. I am in the process of getting that. I just recently was interviewed and did my citizenship test, which I really valued, and I thought it was really interesting to be part of that. I am a South African. I was born in South Africa, but I'm German speaking, so I have those two heritages in my line.
Hey guys again, David. I'm originally from South Sudan. I was born and raised in Kenya in a refugee camp called Kakuma. I think some of you guys might be familiar with that. I'm fortunate enough that I'm here with my 9 siblings, the eldest of them with my mom. So I'm blessed enough to be here. This year, I've been blessed with a scholarship to do my agricultural PhD at UQ. So I'm grateful for that as well. I'm an Australian citizen as well, so I'm just happy to be in Australia, guys.
I am an Australian citizen. My family are Torres Strait Islanders. So even though my dad was born in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, my family had to move there during a war. So Dad was born in PNG, but then all of my family, my grandmother was born on Thursday Island. But yeah, I was born on the east coast of Brisbane by the water, so I'm an Australian citizen.
Great. So the things that we disclose about ourselves are giving everyone clues what we're happy to talk about. So feel free, we'll open up to questions now, and feel free to engage with us through the chat. We have a question I want to start with, maybe. Here's one. So how important, let me know who wants to answer this one. How important is culture to you as you live within Australian society?
Wow, very good question.
Do you want to go for it, Mary?
Yeah, I'll go first. How important is our culture in living here in Australia? I think cultures in general, but me personally, is very important. It makes me who I am today and my decision making, my morality, and living here in Australia, I find it hard a little bit to live between those cultures both together, to uphold both of them equally, because I sometimes do feel like I'm letting go or abandoning my South Sudanese culture a little bit, and that I am leaning more towards Australian culture. It's not a bad thing, but it's just kind of sometimes we see our parents, feeling a little bit sad or upset that they're seeing their child letting go of their culture a little bit. And I do try my hardest to uphold both of them, but it's just hard as a young person trying to find their way through, trying to find their likes and dislikes, so I would say culture is important to me, but I am finding it hard to balance the two cultures equally. I find that I'm leaning more towards one over the other. So yeah. Would you like to go?
I'm wondering, Iram, you can respond whichever way you were thinking, but I'm wondering also whether you want to put the angle of the mother because you have children, and then so you may see culture a little bit differently. How do you instill that in your children, and what would you like them to learn and uphold from your culture?
Yeah. So culture or our beliefs is very important for us, and I think it's important for everybody. I would also like to mention here that culture is the living heart of any society. And while we all come with our own culture and beliefs, but it is something that can be acquired as well. So like Mary was mentioning, that, she's sort of, feels sandwiched between two cultures. And it's normal. I would like to mention it's normal. There's nothing abnormal about it. Obviously, wherever we live, we sort of acquire culture. And we would like to acquire the positives from all culture. But yes, as a mother, and I'm sure with all the mothers, when we've got to brought up a whole generation, we have got to bring up a whole generation. For me, yes, my culture, my beliefs is very important. So we pass down our cultural beliefs, our principles to our children. And I would also like to quote here a saying from the Holy Quran, that God tells us how to do that. So it's in very explicit words we are told that we do not leave our religion and we do not touch anyone's religions or beliefs. So I think that is sort of a beautiful principle, to just live your lives by. You don't leave your beliefs while you don't touch anybody else's. So I think that's what I like to instill in my children as well, that you follow what you believe in, but at the same time, don't judge anyone else, don't ridicule anyone else, don't touch anyone else.
Yeah.
So that's what we teach, and it's very, of course, it's very important to us.
Yeah.
And I think the importance also lies in, we all like to be identified by something. And like Mary said, our culture, our beliefs are very important for our own identity, and therefore for my children to not sort of grow up with an identity crisis, I think it's very important for me as a mother also to make sure that they identify themselves as Muslims. Well, that's what my faith and belief is.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There are a few more questions coming through, but I just wanted to check whether you guys wanted to weigh in on the culture question or move on.
I'm happy to move on.
Move on?
Yep.
Move on. There's one here that is maybe linked to it. How can I ask about your ethnic background without causing offense and without excluding your sense of belonging in Australia? So I'll repeat that one. How can I ask about your ethnic background without causing offense and without excluding your sense of belonging in Australia?
Wow.
I'm wondering who would like to start us off with that one.
I can go.
Okay,
If
Mary.
you guys
Yep,
don't.
let's start with Mary and then someone else can weigh in.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I really like the part where it says without excluding your sense of belonging, because when I first came to Australia, like a common question that I would get is people would be like, oh, like where are you from? And like hearing that question saying without excluding your sense of belonging, I think looking back at those questions that I used to be asked, kind of like in a way excluded like our sense of belonging, because like you're looking at someone and just like immediately be like, yeah, they're not Australian. And so you can like, instead of asking like question like where are you from, you could be like what's your ethnic background, or like what's your ethnicity, instead of being like where are you from, because where you're from assumes that you're not Australian, when someone could literally have been born in Australia, or both their parents have been born in Australia. So just like ask something like what's your ethnicity, or what's your cultural background, or you could put out like something like, for example, saying, if you find this question offensive, the question that I'm about to ask you, if you find it offensive, let me know. But my intentions are not to offend you or to hurt your feelings. And then ask the question. And so that lets them know that if they are offended, that they can feel free to let you know that they are offended by the question. And so that's just like what I want to say. Yeah.
I would like to chip in with Mary, and if I want to really know about somebody's ethnic background, and what I'm really enthusiastic about is how many languages the person could possibly speak. So, I mean, and I think it's a very polite way of asking, so, you know, how many languages do you speak? You know, do you speak more than one language? Can you converse in any other language besides English? I think I would be really fascinated if somebody asked me that. I can sort of see that maybe you speak more than one languages. You know?
Well, I'll jump in there because there's actually one of the questions from our audience is that how do you speak other languages? So maybe start, Iram, and we'll go down the road and see if we have multiple languages spoken.
Yes, I speak Urdu fluently. That's my native language. I can read Arabic and speak Arabic. So sort of a beginners. I can speak beginners French and beginners Spanish as well. So yeah, that's me.
Oh wow! So how many languages is that in total? Is that four?
Four languages maybe.
Wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
That's
pretty.
including English. 5 including English.
That is pretty impressive. That is very impressive.
Yeah.
I'm not skilled like you. I only speak 2 languages fluently, and like I said earlier, like I'm kind of feeling like I'm losing a little bit of my South Sudanese culture. I am a little bit losing my Dinka language, which is like the native language spoken in South Sudan. And so sometimes when I'm like speaking to like my auntie or like my brothers, I would like straight up just say something in English because I can't like say it in Dinka. Or like if I'm saying a sentence in Dinka, I would say something in English, even like when my brothers have asked to like specifically speak Dinka. So I speak 2 languages fluently, and I am intermediate in Arabic, because Arabic is also like a language commonly spoken in both Sudan, so North Sudan and South Sudan. So, and I've been here for like 10 years, and when I want to go back to, you know, go back and visit, I would like to be fluent in Arabic because it's the language commonly spoken everywhere in both Sudan. So. Yeah,
that's great. So I speak 3 languages. I speak English, of course, and German, and I grew up completely German, even though I lived in South Africa all my life. The first time I had a non-German speaking friend was when I was 19 and went to uni, and I had to actually just be colloquial and have fun and jokes and just have casual language. Before that, my English was very formal. And then the 3rd language I speak is Afrikaans.
I speak 3 languages. English, obviously. I'm a Dinka man, so I speak Dinka. And as somebody who grew up in Kenya, I speak Swahili as well.
That's awesome. I obviously speak English. I can speak a little bit of the Kalalangoya, which is a traditional language of the Torres Strait, and I can understand Creole, but I can't speak it super well. But I just want to speak to that previous question about how to approach someone of a different ethnic background. And for me personally, if someone came to me and said like, oh, where are you from? So I'm proud to be Torres Strait Islander. If someone wants to show like an interest in that, then I'll be like, well, I'll tell you, you know, my family from Bardu Island, and you know, this is my mob here, and you know, and this is a little bit of the history of my family, or whatever they want to know, which is a different take on, I guess, how Mary might approach that or feel about being like maybe excluded from or not, you know. But yeah, if I was asked that question, I'd love to share that kind of thing, and I wouldn't feel, you know, displaced because of how it might be asked, because I think there's, for me, there's a little bit of grace for people who don't know what they don't know, and if they just want to ask something but they don't maybe get the question right, that's okay as well.
Yeah, very true. There's a question here, and I think I want to throw that to you, David. Yeah. It says, do you dislike it when a person is referred to as a refugee? Is it a term you generally feel needs to be adjusted or changed, or the way refugees are spoken about in society needs to be changed?
Oh, that's a pretty good question. The refugee question. Hey, I think that if you go back to the definition of somebody being a refugee is somebody who's flown away from their country, either because of maybe political persecution or religious persecution or whatever the case. So most of the time it's not usually a decision that the person is happy to take, but due to the circumstances, they've had to flee away from their country. So for example, my parents had to get away from South Sudan into Kenya, and that's where I was born. So I didn't really have a choice to do, but I was born as a refugee. And as a refugee, it's very hard when you're just confined to the refugee camp, with opportunities with education, which is very important as a young person, with work and stuff like that. So you find that a lot of us, I guess 80% of South Sudanese who are here in Australia came here as refugees. So we don't shy away from, the refugee identity. It is a fact, we came here as refugees, but now we are Australians and still being referred as refugees, as somebody who's helpless. I think that has to change. But we embrace it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think I've heard you say before is that at the end of the day, you just want to be known as David.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's your first identity. And then that comes, and then you are free to add to that, whichever the context allows you to, or whichever you want to.
Yeah,
so David the refugee, or David the tall black man, or anything like that. You are David. And in this case, you're David, my friend, and I just really enjoy working with you. Yeah. There's a question specifically for Mary, so I'll go for that. I really like how it said. It says, "Hi Mary, I like the way you said you are balancing the two cultures you have, and our parents take seriously the culture more than anything." So my question is, the question to you, Mary, is, how do you help your parents to understand the change of the culture to you?
Wow, that's a really good question. How do I help my parents understand a change of culture? I just try to explain to them that I can't control what I like, so if I like Australian culture, or the Australian way of life, or if there's a specific part of Australian way of life that I like more than South Sudanese culture, then I can't control that. I can't control that, and I can't just pretend that that I'm going to meet her expectations, because I want to be happy. I want to enjoy being in Australia, and so I try to convince them that they have to accept this. That this is who I am. This is what I like, and that I can't control me liking Australian culture, and that I will tell them that I'll do my best to meet your expectations, but just know that if there is something about South Sudanese culture that I don't like, or if I like something about a particular Australian culture over South Sudanese, I can't control that, and you just have to accept it and move on. So I just try to convince them that obviously I'm not completely trying to abandon South Sudanese culture and then take the Australian way of life. I'm just taking things that I like about Australian culture and things that I like about South Sudanese culture and live both of them, because why not? So
Yeah, thank you. I can speak maybe from a parent perspective, because we came here as sort of the first ones moving to Australia in 2007, and two of our kids are born in South Africa and one is born here, and it's the youngest who identifies more as being Australian that has challenged us to embrace certain things, and after a while, you just realize that that is actually more enriching. You don't have to abandon, you don't have to choose between previous and new. And there was a significant moment for me when I went with a friend to a citizenship ceremony, and the speaker was inviting all the people that were, you know, now becoming Australian citizens, to just think about having multiple children. And you never love your second child less than your first one. And just because you have a second one doesn't mean you're suddenly forgetting about your first one. They were invited to just love all of who they were equally, and that we all have the capacity to do that. And for me, that was the most inviting way to embrace someone as, you know, adding being Australian to themselves. There are two questions here, and I'll put them both out there, and we can choose where we want to go. One is about how often are you asked to be, whether you're Australian, and how you cope with that, and whether you correct people. And it goes a little bit along with, you know, what is the Australian way of life? And the other one is about racism. So have you experienced racism, and how have you managed it? I'll let you guys decide which one do we want to go for.
We can go racism.
Racism?
Yeah.
All right,
Feel
so
like
the question is, have you experienced racism, and how have you managed it?
Nice.
Do you want to jump in here?
Yeah.
I'm handing to Josh.
Yes, I've experienced racism. Yes, many times, starting in school, with just people in different grades from me calling me racist things, to in the shopping centre, but I'm the one that the self-serve checkout person will always make sure that I'm the one that's not stealing things, putting them in the bag and paying for everything, to incidents with police. And yeah, it's hard because sometimes you could just, you know, it's frustrating, like the self-serve checkout stuff like that honestly gets me pretty frustrated, because it's a lot of the time, and it's just not, I don't think it's needed. Like, I'm not, why is maybe if I look a certain way, or where my family and where I'm from, why does that mean that I'm more likely to steal, or get treated differently by police? So yeah, the way I handle it, yeah, it's even something little like to check out stuff. Like, I'll get back to the car and my fiance might be in the car, and I'll just be like really, really frustrated, because it's just happened again, being looked at differently again to other, you know, non-Indigenous people who are at the self-serve checkout, who, you know, don't get their bags checked. And that might seem like a minor thing, but when it happens again and again, it's just, it gets frustrating. It's like a build up over time of stuff. And the biggest stuff, like with police, that's quite traumatic. So it's very hard to deal with. And even to this day, with certain incidents with police, I'm still, I guess, working through, you know, reconciling my own experiences. And when I work with young people, still saying, you know, that these people, the police, are meant to be here to keep us safe, and these sorts of things. In my experience, that's definitely not been the case. So it's hard to say that, because it's almost not true for me. So I feel like I'm almost lying by telling people, but especially young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students and families who experience this anyway, feel like I'm almost lying. So yeah, I guess it's constant self-evaluation, trying to not act out of emotion but the facts. But for me personally, the facts aren't always a positive thing. So when it happens, I guess I just try and debrief with somebody and try and put that in a box and put that to the side and move on.
I think one of the questions that always comes to me with those responses is whether anyone that's experienced racism or any form of discrimination, whether you feel that you carry the weight of representation. So whether that's added to it. Do you want to respond to that, or David maybe?
Representation. Hey, I think it comes with it. I'm tall, dark, very handsome. I stand out. I stand out, and whether I like it or not, I'm always going to be, the different person. Who's the African guy? Who's the black guy in the building? So I have to kind of, carry my people along with me. How I, interact with other people, how I dress, how I speak. So I kind of, just because I come from a minority, you find that the ratios are, I saw a statistic the other day, and Africans make like 2% of Australians. So I'm definitely going to be standing out everywhere. So whether I like it or not, I'm always going to be carrying, the African title, the black man title. So, but the thing that really hurts about racism is that it's a problem with inclusion, because the moment as human beings we want to be social creatures, and the moment you basically not include somebody else, then that's a problem. So how do we deal with this? I feel like, and I have these conversations with my little brother who's 16 years old in high school, and I'm like, dude, you need to know where you come from. Yeah, you need to know your sense of identity, so that when somebody tells you that you're a monkey, you're like, no, I'm not a monkey. I come from a lineage of, respectful, people. So, having those conversations with your young ones, searching through history, okay, where do I come from? Knowing your identity, and also speaking up, voice up. It's time, whereby now we can't just be quiet. Let's have conversations about this, and we don't have to fight, we can always dialogue. There's ways we can go about these kind of things.
Yeah, that's very true. I think speaking up is not always easy though. Hey, I find as someone that perhaps is more on the ally side of things, that I want to be aware of racism when it happens around me. I get caught off guard so easily. It'll be at my dinner table, and we're sitting around on Friday evening having a meal together with friends, and someone will just sneak in a joke, and it's not funny. Because it has a racist edge, or it has a homophobic edge, or some kind of discriminatory edge to it, but everyone's laughing. Before we know it, we've all laughed, and then at what point do I spoil the dinner party and say, I'm the boring one, I'm always the one that's justice driven, and says, oh, that's not funny, we don't want to say that. So I've learned to apologize really well. I've learned to go back to people and go, I know you were on the receiving end of that, and I didn't interfere in the moment. Yeah. I'm truly sorry, full stop. Not give a reason for it. I was caught off guard maybe, but I don't have to say that. I can just say apologize and say I haven't stood next to you and sort of held the space for you there. So that's how I see it from my point of view. I'm interested to hear from both of you, Iram and Mary, how you respond to racism, whether you've experienced it and how you respond.
Well, I've certainly experienced racism, and it happened. It's very real. It happened when I started covering, which was around 3 years back. I would not cover myself before that. So, and then it really hits home. Oh my God, it's real. It's going to happen. It's pretty much out there. And like Josh mentioned, he's experienced very overt form of racism. Racism can be very covert as well. It can be through a person's body language, body stiffening up when you're the only one entering a certain place where you're the only one who's fully covered, and corner of the eyes. So I think one needs to, how I deal with it now is, I think I'm prepared for it. I've been trained and I've been tuned into it. And also, debriefing with somebody is also a good option. And also, I think we all need to understand that we cannot all be the same. We cannot all be the same. Our beauty lies in being different. And I take pride in being different now. Even if I'm entering or sitting right here being the only one covered, I'm proud of it. There's no harm being, there's $1 billion fashion industry because people want to look different, right? So we need to accept that fact that we will be different. And I think we need to educate people that there is no harm in being different. You need to accept people who look different from you. And I think that's the very reason why we all here, and through dialogue, I think, is the best way. So I think to deal with racism is to really have a think about it, and I think be prepared for it. It's not going to go overnight. And what part can I play in the society to help alleviate it to the best that I can, And I think education and dialogue is the best way. And be prepared for it. Once you step outside of your house, be prepared to deal with it. Although in that moment we do, do not know how to react, but then thinking about it and then preparing for future such incidents, it's important. I think it serves the purpose.
Yeah, I have experienced racism from different spectrum, from low racism to like extreme racism. And usually when we think about, I like to take this angle on racism, because usually when we think of racism, we think it's like the white people being, the bad guys, and the people of color are on the receiving ends, or that are the victims. My experience hasn't been the case where it's white people, being racist to me, and it's been actually other people of color being racist to me. And when I said from low to extreme racism, all of them have been from people of color, actually. And before, I was not always ready to manage racism properly. So one of the extreme racism that I experienced, I actually just broke down in tears, because I just thought in my head, for God's sake, it's 2024. How can you say such a wild thing? And this situation, I didn't start anything. It was just an interaction that I saw between two different people, and it was an interaction that involved racism. And I just stepped in and I just said hey, let's not escalate the situation, because the interaction I was watching was an interaction of, racism, but it was about to escalate to physical violence. And I just stepped to the side and I just said hey, let's not go there. And this was at a bus stop, so I didn't even know these people, the person I was standing up for or the person being racist. And I just said, hey, let's not escalate the situation, And then I suddenly become the victim, the people that were being racist, they started targeting me, threatening me, saying, we're gonna bash you, this and this and this. And, saying, go back to Africa, go back to your jungle and stuff like that. And I just broke down in tears. I just said, we're in 2024, how can you not know this is not okay to say? And so in that moment, when I reflected back, I realized that a lot of the times, or sometimes, you can be caught off guard depending on how severe racism is. And when you're caught off guard, it's okay to be emotional, because in that instant, I was not equipped to deal with it in any way. So I just broke down in tears. And but now I like to think that I am ready to, if someone was to be racist to me, I like to have a dialogue. But I don't think that I am prepared. Obviously, I won't fight, but I would might withdraw from the environment, or not talk to them at all, depending on whether the racism is coming from bias, whether they intentionally trying to hurt me by being racist, or is just coming from not knowing. So, you know, if there's someone that is, you know, saying something racist or that is low-key racist, but they're willing to have a dialogue, then I'm comfortable with having a dialogue. But if there's someone that is just, you know, saying just extremely racist, then I will just withdraw, because it's just not a safe environment to be in. So to sum it up, the way that I deal with it is I usually like get emotional, or I would withdraw from the environment and interaction. But now if someone is willing to have a conversation, then I'm happy to have that conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can, you know, from all the different perspectives and some sharing, you know, feel, what I can definitely feel is the weight of the burden of having to be prepared and having to expect that, where I'm very aware that I don't necessarily have to, you know, go into every place so prepared, even though I'm prepared to stand by someone, but I can somehow embrace life a little bit more easily. And, you know, this is some of the reasons why we share these stories, so we can feel for each other and have that empathy for each other's situation. There's a fun one here that I want to throw out, and I don't know if we want to envision this. So this is looking to the future. If you could all look into the crystal ball, what does a perfect, accepting, welcoming and thriving Queensland look like in 10 years' time? Are we on the journey to be there, or do we have a long way to go?
Wow. That's a good one. Well, I would like to ask that, or mention that there's no such thing as perfect. We cannot achieve perfection, but I think we can strive for it through practice. What they say, the right practice makes one perfect. So I think we need to gear our energies towards doing the right practice, and I think the Multicultural Australia, the Department of the Government, is, I think, moving in the right direction. And of course, we're going to reap benefits in future down the road. We will reap benefits. I'm sure of it. We are trying to close the gap. So, and we should keep trying. Till we reach there.
Us, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, I think for us as an organisation, that's where we invest in young people.
Oh, yep.
And I have to say, even in the few years that I've been doing this work, there has been a change. You know, I think there's a greater acceptance, or a greater awareness, a greater willingness to have conversations and have dialogue, and also, you know, a greater willingness to put things out there that people feel uncomfortable with, and just go, I'm not okay with this, I'm finding this difficult, I don't understand this, why are we voting on this, why are we, you know, if we can ask good questions, I think that's one of the recipes of growing closer to each other. Because I think very seldomly have I come across a robust situation where we have a robust conversation where then, you know, people move apart and are offended and are angry. Actually, if you stay the course and have that conversation, people move closer to each other. So I think that's maybe for me one part of the recipe to greater inclusion or ability to live with each other with greater acceptance. Any ideas on here, David?
Yeah, I think in the modern age now where everybody's on social media, I think it's very important that stories of positive stories of minorities are being shared, not just the stabbing of the 70-year-old grandma.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people from minority backgrounds that are doing a lot of positive stuff, creating businesses, giving opportunities to other people in the community. So I think it's very important that as much as the negative stories are shared, maybe we can double down on also the positive stories as well.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said in terms of just being a more accepting society of differences, and I think for me, it would be every space just being a safe space for everyone. And I guess, an example would be, non-Indigenous, and not all non-Indigenous Australia, but I guess, David mentioned before about social media, which is not a safe place for lots of minority groups. And I guess in, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people follow rugby league or play rugby league, and when we get events where there's a welcome to country, or an acknowledgement of country, or Indigenous players and teams, and these things getting torn down by people saying, I don't need to be welcomed to my own country, I live here, my parents are born here, their parents are born here, their parents are born here. It's like, well, and people say, well, this is divisive. It's like, well, if you welcome someone into your home, right, when someone comes over, hey, come in, good to see you. And a welcome to country, I'm not sure how, and little things like that, it's a welcome. It's not don't come here. It's, hey, welcome. We're glad to have you here. We're glad to have this event here, whether it's a concert or a sporting event or just whatever it is, a little community event. Welcome, you're welcome here. We want to have you here. And, a lot of these things, like I said, people will make comments in community or on social media without any sort of repercussion, but it's not divisive. And so when there's that tension and that conflict on social media, which spills out into community, one of my instances of a perfect world would be just that accepting that we're all different, and just having safe spaces for all people, black, white, pink, or otherwise, whatever faith background, we just love to have you here would be ideal. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, thank you for that. We can just keep working on it, hey, and just everybody bring their part, and with whoever is in front of them, be that person that engages with them in an interested and curious and engaged way, rather than tapping into, stereotypes or preconceived ideas. There's a question here that's been sitting on the screen for a while, so I want to honor it. Tips for teachers. Do you have any information for school teachers in relation to multicultural education? Maybe an insight from your experience or your children's experience. I may respond straight away, and then if anyone else wants to weigh in. I think one of the interesting things that I've experienced just with my own kids, but also just being in schools a lot and working with young people, is that they really need the school teachers to be on board as well. And one of the things that I think is very important for any one of us adults is to know our own bias, check our own unconscious bias, know where we are, because that in itself is not a problem. But if we don't know, then we can actually create an issue. So instead of trying to correct a student or correct a child in their behavior, making sure that you know yourself before you step in to support someone or to correct someone. That's sort of top of mind, my answer. But if there's anyone else who wants to respond to the question.
Could you just read the question?
Yeah, I can read again.
Do
you have some information for school teachers in relation to multicultural education? Maybe an insight from your experience or your children's experience.
Yeah, so my working professional background is in education, and in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander teams, so only from that perspective. But yes, one thing that I've said to schools a lot is with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, education, significant dates, your families are your first community. So it's about building and developing and fostering a genuine connection with families. And what that does is make school a safer place for young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, but also it means we can then invite our parents in, or grandparents or uncle or auntie, to come in and yarn to the young people. And that could be for NAIDOC week, it can be for any of the significant dates on the calendar. And that then can also be tied to national curriculum, whether it's history, maths, science, a lot of these things. Therefore, it's actually educational, and we're still making genuine connections with our Indigenous community. So that's the first thing that I always say to schools is, include your parents in the conversation around education, and particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. And one thing that our elders and traditional owners will bring is knowledge and wisdom and experience that you can't Google, you can't get from a textbook. And that wisdom that they bring is good for all students, not just Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students.
I can weigh on.
Yeah.
I'll weigh in that one. So I graduated high school in 2021, and I went from like a mainstream, kind of like Caucasian school, like a school that was like predominantly Caucasian, and then ethnic kids were like the minority. And then so I went from there, and then I went to a very diverse multicultural school. So from grade 11 and 12, that's where I completed my high school graduation at. So that school was a multicultural one. And the biggest difference that I felt was that the teachers at the multicultural diverse school, they were, I felt that they were more equipped with teaching, or like more experience with teaching people from diverse backgrounds. And the other thing that like helped me that they did was they showed a genuine interest in me. Like they would ask questions, and they were very like sensitive, very aware of, like my feelings, and they were very equipped in making sure they don't hurt my feelings, offering some like counseling if I need some counseling, because they do understand that a lot of kids, because I came to Australia as a refugee, so they kind of understand that a lot of refugee background kids have some level of trauma, and something that a teacher might say. A teacher might think that them asking a question or saying something to a student is perfectly fine, but it might trigger some unpleasant feelings to them. But the teachers at this multicultural diverse school, they were very like sensitive, and they just knew how to approach someone from a diverse background. So I thought that really helped me. It made me come out of my shell. Like I used to be really, really shy. But when I saw that these teachers just wanted the best for me, they showed genuine interest in me, and they believed in me. Like they would tell me like, Mary, I can see you can do this, and if you need help with with preparing for public speaking or for getting good grades, I can help you with this. I do see that you can do this. You've got it. You just got to have a little bit of a push. And so when I saw that these teachers showed genuine interest in me, they believed in me, it made me come out of my shell, and I actually started to excel well in my community engagement, as well as my academic. Like I became a school vice captain at that school, despite having been there only in grade 11 and 12. And I achieved other things like public speaking, debating, and it was an extraordinary story. And my family have always said that this was the best decision I made, going from mainstream school to like a really diverse school. I think that diverse school was really made for me, And yeah, that's been my experience.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end. There was a question then, there are a few obviously that we didn't get to, and apologies to that. Very stimulating, very great conversation. And one of the questions sort of acknowledged the trauma and the experience, whether it was a background or the racism experience. And I'm turning it into an encouragement for all of us to find those safe spaces, to find the hope that we all need to be supported through that. Thank you very much, all of you, to being here with me and being here together. Thank you to the audience and for wonderful questions. And we just want to encourage everyone to just keep engaging with those that are different from you in a respectful way, asking respectful questions. Thank you very much.